Hi everyone. Now I'd like to talk about Paul for a while. And Paul is at least as important as Jesus was for the existence of Christianity. I've got a couple things to tell you that some of you are not going to like, so buckle in for a moment. Absolutely none of the New Testament was written during Jesus' lifetime. Not one lick of it. So none of those authors were actual apostles. Matthew wasn't Matthew, Luke wasn't Luke, John wasn't John, not one of them. They're all a minimum of 35 years after Jesus dies. And the earliest one, in fact, is Paul. And Paul never met Jesus. So, all right, so things to know. Number one, we don't have a New Testament until the 4th century. So you've got like 3.5 centuries of people just like squabbling about what Christianity should look like. And prior to 70 CE, with the destruction of the temple, there's no such thing as Christianity, right? There are like Jews who think Jesus was the Messiah, and there are Jews who don't think Jesus was the Messiah. And the latter is really in the majority, as for reasons that we have discussed, right? Jesus didn't save the state. He's not a Jewish Messiah. But everybody met the temple, and you did the same thing that you've been doing for, 2,000 years, et cetera, et cetera. Well, at the time of Jesus' death, it is the estimate of the single most important scholar on this time period, in America at least, that Jesus had about 20 followers, 20. So how do you go from that to being the biggest religion in the world? Well, the linchpin is Paul. And the reason for that is, okay, well, let's talk about Paul for a sec. So Paul was a Jew living in Jerusalem, whose job it was to like beat up on baby Christians. Then one day and I don't mean babies, I mean nascent Christians, you know what I mean. Okay. So one day he's on the road to Damascus, and he falls off his horse, and he has this huge vision, and he wakes up and boom, he's a Christian. So he goes back to Jerusalem. Well, who wants to be Paul's friend? Right? The Jews were like, "You're a Christian?" And the Christians are like, "You spent years beating us up. Get out of here." Right? So Paul goes to Peter. He does know Peter. This is a legit relationship. And says, "Do you mind if I go talk to the Romans?" And Peter's like, "What? I guess not. Sure." But he's not that sanguine about it, right? Peter is totally on, the Jesus board here, which is we're only here to talk to Jews. Jesus never thought this was going to be a universal thing. And Peter only talks to Jews, which was a critical flaw in the plan, because if it had been left up to Peter, there'd be no Christianity. So Rome is, vast, and the population actually speaks mostly Greek, right? The New Testament is written in Greek. Jesus spoke Aramaic, and he could have, he would have read and spoken Hebrew as well. But yeah, so we're mostly talking a Greek-speaking Roman population. And everywhere that Paul goes that we have the letters from, right? So like Corinth is in Greece, and Ephesus is in Turkey, etc. So he starts these churches in these places, and he keeps up with them. And he feels the need to look after them and make sure that they're staying the course and that they understand what the rules are. And it is Paul who universalizes this religion. And he's a good guy. He goes back to Peter whenever he has a question about these things, and he's like, Okay, so again, we've got hundreds of years of there not being like a Christianity said, right? So one of the enormous questions is how Jewish do you have to be, right, to be a Christian? And it's also not clear at all that the Hebrew scriptures are going to be appended to the Christian scriptures, right? That would be news to everyone in the first couple of centuries. That was totally up in the air, right? And so Paul's like, my little Roman friends over here, they don't want to be kosher. Kosher just sounds like a terrible idea. And uh, Peter's like, yeah, okay, whatever. They don't have to be kosher. And Paul's like, my Roman friends, they're not about circumcision. The idea of getting circumcised as adult males, this is just way too much to ask of them. And Peter's like, well, okay, I guess we can let go of circumcision. And then this just goes on. So it is Paul who universalizes this religion. And he saves it, right? And who is attracted to this religion? Well, it is young, wealthy Roman women. This is a bit shocking, right? Like, how did this happen? It's like, well, what we have to remember is that Roman women were literally owned, right, by their fathers and then by their husbands. And I mean owned to the extent that your father could murder you just for funsies, and there was no recourse. Right? I'm not saying many people did, but I'm saying, right? So a young Roman woman would get like married off to an arranged marriage with some old skanky friend of her dad's because their businesses cooperated or their lands adjoined or whatever. It had nothing to do with her, right? And then she'd like have a bazillion babies and die in childbirth and hate the guy she's married to for the rest of her days. And so when Paul comes along, Paul's like, hey, ladies, I have a better answer for you. Why don't you run away and don't get married and live, just on your own, and you can travel and you can preach? And these women are like, yes, please. So it is Roman women who make Christianity, and it is Paul who appeals to them. All right, see you soon. Bye.